Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. This is John, and I am the event coordinator at Murder by the Book here in Houston. And before we get started with Chelsea tonight, I just wanted to make a couple of quick store announcement things to let everybody know what is going on. So as I said, I am John. I'm the event coordinator at Murder by the Book in Houston. And I'm super excited to chat with Chelsea Mueller tonight about Prom House. I've known her online, and I've gotten to hang out with her in person a couple times, and I'm so excited for this book. But I wanted to mention, if you have not visited us in store in a while, the store is open for browsing. We reopened on Halloween. We thought that was kind of a fitting day to have people come back in the store. So if you haven't come to see us, come check us out. We're happy to recommend books over the phone. If you're not coming, if you're not getting kind of out in the world yet, we're still doing curbside pickup. Wanted to mention before I forget, we do still have some signed copies of Prom House. So if you have not pre-ordered your copy yet, we still have signed copies available in store. As I said, we're still doing curbside pickup. So if you don't want to come in, just give us a call when you pull into the parking lot, and we will run outside and bring you some books. Also wanted to mention, we haven't had an issue in a while, but sometimes with Facebook, we have some people that will post scam links on the page saying that if you want to watch the event, click this link and give them your credit card info. Don't do that. It's a scam. You don't have to click away to watch the event. It's live on Facebook and YouTube. I will block any of those that pop up as I see them. But just want to make sure that you're aware of those so people don't kind of click on them before I can get to them. Also wanted to mention a couple of other things that we have got coming up. We're super excited. If you are a thriller fan, we are going to be doing a ticketed event with Riley Sager on June 30th for his new book, Survive the Night. And he is going to be in conversation with Abby Endler from Crime by the Book. So you can order signed and personalized copies of that from us. I will drop a link in the chat in just a minute for that. Also wanted to mention, if you have read Chelsea's previous books and you are a fan of urban fantasy, I'm super excited. I'm going to be chatting with Melissa Marr, Kelly Armstrong, and Janine Frost on July 14th. They are releasing a short story collection called Hex on the Beach. And I think they have said that they're sold out of the limited edition hardcovers that they were doing. So if you want to get a paperback from us with a book plate signed by all three of them, you can visit murderbooks.com to do that too. So lots of great stuff coming up. But tonight, I'm super excited for us to be chatting with Chelsea Mueller about her new book, Prom House. As we are chatting, if you have questions, please post those in the comments, and I will include those in while we're chatting. So I'm going to bring Chelsea out. How are you tonight, Chelsea?
I'm doing great, John. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for doing this with us.
Absolutely.
So some of you guys might have caught, Chelsea was kind enough to chat with Patricia Briggs in March when Patty's new book came out. So if you do want to catch that chat, it's available on the Facebook and YouTube channel. If you haven't spent any time on the YouTube channel, there's all kinds of great stuff out there. We've done events with Patricia Briggs, Jim Butcher, Kim Harrison. So lots of stuff out there if anybody is watching and they want to check those out. So Chelsea, congratulations on Prom House.
Thank you. Thank you. Definitely excited.
Yeah. So can you tell everybody who is watching a little bit about it?
Yes. So Prom House is a really snappy YA thriller, kind of a throwback to Fear Street or like Christopher Pike. Very much fun. So you basically have 10 friends who get a prom house for the weekend on the Jersey Shore. Prom houses are an actual thing for those of you who are not in the loop on that. But basically, the kids rent a house for the weekend, and hurricane comes in, they're locked in, and one by one, they start to die. So they're trying to figure out who in the house could be a killer. Is it somebody's prom date? They've all been friends for a long time for the most part. So there's a lot of, we all know each other's backstories. So what secrets are missing? And they all have something that's in their history that makes things fun.
I'm so excited when I heard that that you were kind of doing an updated version on kind of the Christopher Pike R.L. Stine. Like I was so in, because those were some of my favorite books. So were you more of a Christopher Pike fan or more of an R.L. Stine fan?
R.L. Stine.
Christopher Pike on my end. So we're on the opposite ends of the. So when you were did you know that when you started this that you were gonna kind of do kind of an updated take on one of those?
So, I really went into it with the concept. And as I started to play with it, found that I really liked doing something that was a little bit more pulpy drama, as opposed to a lot of the YA thrillers right now are very ripped from the headlines, and they're excellent. But they're almost like, the fictionalized true crime. And I really did love and both the R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike stuff when I was a teenager. And I love that you can read them really fast and it felt really, really relatable, but also just kind of soapy because it should be soapy at that time. So yeah, as it started to come together, that's kind of where I went. And I really wanted to do the fun stuff. I wanted to do kissing and murder, which for me are the fun stuff.
That's one of the fun things about working in Murder by the Book. You can hear people say stuff like kissing and murder. It's the fun stuff. And everyone's like, yep, exactly. It's fine. So the book has come out with Underlined, which is a new publisher imprint. Can you tell everybody a little bit about what Underlined is and what they do?
Sure. Underlined is an imprint at Random House Children's, and it is all paperbacks. And the idea is that they have one new book a month. You can sit and gulp them down in a day. They do just the fun stuff, thrillers, romance, and horror. So genre fiction. Most of them are between 50 and 60,000 words. So like, a couple hundred pages, and are everything that I've read of them. And I found pretty compulsively readable. It's those books that you want to glom and then where's my next one? Where's my next one?
Yeah. I was so excited to hear when the imprint was launching. A big friend of the store, Owen Laukinen, he has just had a book come out with him too. He's the sweetest guy, and we're so excited to see him kind of jump into the YA world. So publishing wise, was this a book that you had an idea for and you pitched it to them, or did they reach out to you for it?
They actually reached out to me for it. And so we had kind of had a seed of a story. And so I put together kind of a pitch around that and gave a couple chapters. And once they heard Kylie's voice, who's the protagonist, they were like, that's what we're looking for. We want something fast and murder on the page pretty quick. Not a surprise that there's a dead body within, the first 2 chapters. Yeah.
So when you were working on it or getting ready to work on it, did you go back and reread any of those old R.L. Stine or Christopher Pike books?
I look back at The Overnight, The Wrong Number. It's funny when it comes to Christopher Pike stuff. I actually also really had liked the Thirst books, which is not a surprise. Those of you who don't know this, I ran Vampire Book Club. I love all things vampire books. So I didn't reread those, but it was kind of funny when I started thinking about Christopher Pike stuff. I'm like, oh, that's right, the Thirst.
Mm-hmm. So. What's so funny about those books, because I tried to reread the Chain Letter books like not that long ago, because like I was kind of terrified to like dip into them because like I love them as a teen, and I didn't know if they were going to hold up. And it's kind of funny that they kind of don't, because they're not. I mean, they were written for teens, but it didn't really seem like teens were kind of the right audience for them, because like none of those characters talk how like teens would. It's like, oh, this is an adult. Things like this is how teens write or talk.
But what's funny about that is like when you were a teen, you totally glommed those books, right? Like it was perfect. And I think it's interesting when you go back and read them now that they don't hit you the same way because you're an adult. Yeah. But like as an author, when I look at them, I can see exactly why. Like you're just so hooked into that drama that like, yeah, at 15, oh my God, they were amazing.
Yeah, and you're like, I was like reading them like, why are these teens? Why do they talk so formally? This is so weird. Like,
very proper.
Very proper, yeah. But like you said, I just remember like gobbling them all up and then going like immediately from like those to like Dean Koontz and Stephen King. Like there was like no in between at all.
No, it's funny. I remember I went to Dean Koontz because my stepmom was a Dean Koontz fan, and I was visiting my dad for the summer and made the leap to Dean Koontz because there were paperbacks available, and I snatched them up.
Yeah. So I have to wonder too, as I was watching, actually, so I just started they're doing a Melinda Clark and Rachel Bilson, who were on the OC, have just started this thing where a podcast where they're rewatching all of the episodes of the show, and they're doing a podcast for each one. And each time, like they've had like the show's creator, and they've had like Peter Gallagher, and I think they're on like episode 4. But one of the things that they were talking about is how like these teen shows like the OC, or even like especially like Dawson's Creek, started talking. And like even kind of the Scream movies, like they started using kind of these teens, and they were actually using like proper, like the way that teens speak, as opposed to like we were talking about Christopher Pike stuff. So I kind of have to wonder if that was like kind of some of the because I mean at that point like YA wasn't like what YA is now. So I kind of have to wonder if that was some of the early popularity of shows like that, is because finally teens were like, oh my gosh, this is how we actually talk, and it's not, you know, like you said, kind of proper and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there probably was a lot of that relatability, although I think some of those shows still tried to do a bit of like smart kid, like teens, which is I don't know, was appealing to me because that was my demo. That was me.
Yeah. So what were some of the challenges of jumping into a straightforward thriller after having done urban fantasy and kind of magic or paranormal stuff?
It's so different because, well, one, I love the magic, but you get so used to, you built out the world yourself, and here this is very much a real place, with real world problems. It was funny. One of my big hurdles was, you know, the idea was that I was going to have the prom house and, you know, murder mystery, right? And I was trying to figure out how people would be locked in and not just have technology to solve things. Like how are you, you know, locked in a rental house and not be able to just call the cops, leave, call your parents? Like that's, you know, and so that's the reason there's a hurricane in the book, is because there had to be some sort of real world reason why you wouldn't just pick up your phone and call for help, why you wouldn't bring in resources. And it's funny because, like, you know, in urban fantasy, I can create a whole lot of reasons why technology doesn't work. You know, there's a lot of making it up that's fun. So that was one of the hurdles, but also like one of the things that was really fun, and really having to lean heavily on external plot, and making sure that functioned really well, was fun. I mean, there's my urban fantasy, you know, obviously have had murder mystery components to them. They always have some sort of mystery, things that we're trying to solve, crime related. Usually everybody's in the gray areas. Nobody's a cop in my books, but so it was interesting here to have to solve that. Still, the amateur PI. I mean, the cops show up and mostly we're just, you know, making jokes about their names, and they're kind of unimpressed with these teenagers. So yeah, that was kind of where I started, and was the hurdle. And it's funny, like right now, like I'm working on new stuff that has magic in it again, and it's like, ooh, now I get to. There's this new freedom, but the fun skill set that comes from having a lot of real world researching happening.
Well, and it makes sense, you know, being in Texas, that you were like, oh, I need to figure out a way that they can't leave the house, and there's hurricane, boom, easy. So you mentioned research. So what kind of research did you do for this one? Did you research kind of like what renting a prom house would entail and things like that?
Yeah, I absolutely looked at one, because like I certainly didn't have a prom house when I don't know if it was really a thing then. And it definitely seems like there's a lot of coastal prom houses when you look at that. But also, I actually looked at the houses that people rent on the Jersey Shore that people would get for a weekend, looking at location, looking at the plausibility of something that was on the shore, but not down the shore. If you're in Jersey, it's down the shore. Down the shore, that would be remote enough that somebody in the house next door wouldn't hear you. Does that exist? What do things cost? I know that that was one of those that was originally a shock to me, is seeing how much people pay for a prom house. It is definitely spendy, but you've also got 10 people and their parents are all chipping in and splitting the cost. But yeah, lots of location settings. What does that look like? it really made me want to go to the beach. I did a lot of looking on like Airbnb and Vrbo, and actually like found potential prom houses, several which would make great writing retreat locations, to be quite honest. It helped too, because I was writing this before the pandemic, but I was pregnant, and so I really wasn't like going a lot of places. And so, you know, I'm starting like brainstorming all of these, like, oh, we could go there, we could go there. And then there was a pandemic, so I haven't gone anywhere.
So what has the pandemic been like? Obviously you said, you know, you were pregnant, you have a baby. Like, how has the pandemic been for you creatively? Have you been actually able to focus and get writing done?
I have. It's been kind of hit or miss. You know, I was really productive when my little one was real little. He's 11 months now, very mobile. So now, right? So now he's growing very fast. So I've kind of shifted the schedule, and actually it's been the last, I don't know, few months. I've really seen my productivity go up as I've kind of solidified new projects and new ideas. And I've started doing more kind of sprints with other authors, which has made a big difference, of having either like a virtual write-in, which I have a couple every week with some author friends, or some sprints with some of my agency mates. We do writing sprints together, and kind of building that community out of it has definitely been helpful, because I think a lot of us suffered from the like isolation that comes from pandemic. I mean, being an author is a, you know, a lonely profession if you don't make time for friends and others. And when we weren't going to bookstores and we weren't going places, it's like,
yeah, and like I've heard so many authors say, like, it's a lonely profession, but usually it's lonely because like you need it to be so you can get writing done, and then like if you want to see people, then like you can, but like you said, like we haven't been able to see people or go anywhere or do anything. So one of the things I think is cool, you know, I mentioned when we were introing, like I've known you online through Twitter for years, just as a fellow fan of urban fantasy. And like, can you talk a little bit about kind of making the jump from kind of just being a reader, not just being a reader, but being a reader and a fan, to how you became a published author and writing in the genre?
Yeah. So it was weird. and weird in that, like, writing wasn't weird to me. I've always been a writer. I used to be a journalist, and then switched to writing books, and really have always been passionate about books, and both writing and reading. But the thing that was weird is being a part of a kind of that fan community on Twitter and in blogs, and suddenly switching sides, if you will. So like the first time, you know, I went to a convention as an author, and it was like, am I supposed to hang out with the authors now? And like, do they want me to hang out with them? And how is everyone so cool with me being here? Which was kind of crazy. But what was interesting too is, you know, my book Borrowed Souls was urban fantasy, and I love urban fantasy. And it was really kind of mind blowing when we sent the book out for blurbs. The response, one, it was like in awe that the people that I so admired and so loved my book, like that. There's a lot of personal validation in that, but also like just super nerdy that all of a sudden you would get an email from Dorinda Jones, and she was like, "This is amazing! I'm so excited for you." Kind of just blew my mind. But also one of the things that was you kind of asked what the shift is like, trying to make sure I was really transparent with people about this is my book. Here's all the other books that I'm recommending, and I'm still want to give you all the book recs, but like being clear and transparent there.
Yeah, it's weird, kind of similarly for me, you know, because I'm also a huge urban fantasy fan, but then like being a bookseller and kind of get to know people and get to do stuff like when Melissa and Mara and Kelly Armstrong asked Murder by the Book to be the booksellers for StoryCon, it was like, oh my, like Reader John is like so excited about this, and Bookseller John is so excited about this too, and like sometimes it's crazy, like to get to read authors who have become your friends, and you're like, oh my God, I'm still flailing about your book. But it's because, yeah, it's weird sometimes having having your foot kind of in both worlds. So Pamela Elliott, who we love, is watching, and she says, Chelsea, congrats. She can't wait to read Prom House. Hi, Pam. Thanks for tuning in tonight. That's one of the things I love about kind of urban fantasy is just the community is so welcoming and so wonderful, and they love to share book racks. And, urban fantasy readers will read anything. They'll read thrillers, they'll read romance, and kind of how urban fantasy is kind of this perfect genre that kind of gets to throw all of those, like you said, fun things together, and you can kind of play with all of them in a really cool way. We asked about the transition between urban fantasy and teen thriller. So do you think that you're still going to keep your foot in both worlds and kind of do both?
Yeah. I think I am. The stuff I'm working on right now, that I'm writing right now, is adult. It's adult fantasy. Yeah. But I definitely have some YA stuff cooking, we'll say. Nothing I can share at the moment, but more YA, more very everything that I'm writing for YA has been very contemporary, kind of snappy, sometimes some sci-fi components, because sometimes I can't help myself. but yeah, foot in both worlds. I do miss writing. I had missed writing fantasy, so I'm excited to do something kind of meatier from a fantasy perspective for adults, which is what I'm working on now, and it's super fun. And there's cool magic. I'm always excited about cool magic.
Awesome. So in Prom House, like we said, it is a thriller, and like you said, it's kind of that pulpy. It's also kind of a bloody book. I mean, it kind of has to be. Like, so how, when you were writing it, how did you know how far you could push kind of because there's a body count too. So how did you know like how far you could push, having done kind of adult urban fantasy where you can kind of push a little bit further versus making sure that it's kind of, and granted, appropriate for teens, but not being too like gory. So how did you figure out kind of where that line was?
Is there? No. I some of it was just tone based. I think sometimes what I do is I write and then let some people read. And so I tested some of those scenes to make sure that it worked. From a body count perspective, I did have some concern about killing too many people. It's funny, when I was writing the book, there was a running joke in our house because my husband came to could hear me verbally noodling in this office. And he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, how many people is too many people to kill? I'm just, is 3 too many? Is 5 too many? And he's just looking at me like, I'm glad we've been married so long that I know that you were talking about killing people in your book. Yeah. And not to give things away, but I certainly put some thought into how we find bodies and when we find them. And really tried to be thoughtful about when there was gore and when there was not. And sometimes we only see certain things, or only certain things are on the page, to not go too deep into that. But yeah, it's a little gory. It was kind of a bit of a joke about having a favorite murder in the book, because I had a favorite. I didn't say that because it feels weird to say. And then I sent the book to my agent and was like, hey, can you kind of give me a gut check? And she has a kiddo the right age and stuff. She's like, oh my gosh, my kid will love this. But also, they had the same favorite murder. Nice. My agent was like, so is it wrong to have a favorite murder? And I was like, as long as it's the same as mine, no, it's fine.
And I don't want to, and I said it's kind of, that's a bloody book and there's a body count. I don't want to scare anybody who's reading it off. Like she said, I mean, it's not like gratuitous violence. It's, one of the things I think that you did really well too is, you really balanced kind of the violence that happens, and it's not just like kind of flippant violence. Like these kids get to have like actual reactions to it. It's not like, the opening scene of Scream where Rose McGowan's like, oh, did you hear that this person got, gutted last night? And it's like big flippant thing. So you did a really good job of balancing and making like the characters, be shocked and like going through the stages of grief and doing everything that a normal or a human person would go through as they're kind of faced with this.
Well, and I think that it was important that people felt what happened. And I think that all of that, particularly in this microcosm of them stuck in this house together, that's it all gets amplified too. So they kind of feed off of each other in terms of how you're processing and how other people processing that grief impacts the way that you feel about it as well. So.
And so a couple of writing process questions. So you said, you know, your husband could hear you kind of verbally noodling. So did you outline, or did you just kind of, are you a plotter or a pantser?
It depends on the book. I've historically been a pantser. All of the Soul Charmer books definitely pantsed, 100% pantsed. I did more of a kind of a what I call tentpole writing with this, where basically I had all of my key kind of turning points in the book. Like I knew where I needed to have bodies. I knew, you know, kind of where I was starting, where I needed to go from an ending perspective, and needed to kind of figure out how to connect all of that stuff. I will say I did do a little bit different type plotting with this one. I wrote Prom House in Scrivener, which I haven't always been a fan of, but I am now. And one of the things that I used with that was kind of a visual way of tracking what was happening in scenes, whether there was a dead body, which I totally used a little skull emoji as an icon, and then if there was kissing, and if there was kind of like a friendship component. So I could kind of keep a visual tab on, like, hey, it's been a long time since we've done X. You know, if we've been really heavy on gore, murder, etc., do we need to have a pause here to kind of have some emotional evaluation? Do we need to lighten it up with some, you know, kissing, that kind of a thing? So I'm slowly becoming more and more of a plotter every day. I didn't ever think it was going to happen, but that's where we are.
Well, and I imagine it had to help with a thriller like this, because you want it to be fast and you, like you said, snappy, but like you still have to be able, like you said, to work in those moments of, you know, kissing or humor and stuff like that, so that way people actually care about these characters and it actually matters whether or not they're going to survive through this thing or not.
Well, I think you need a breath too. Like, you know, like yes, like for me the murders are fun, but also like that stuff can be heavy. You need a moment where there's like something fun. There needs to be a good joke. There needs to be something to give you that breath.
Yeah. So we talked about you being a big urban fantasy fan. So who are some of your favorites, and what have you read lately that you've loved?
Oh, thank goodness. Well, I mean, I will tell everybody that they should totally go and pre-order the paperback of Hex on the Beach, because I love Melissa Marr, Kelly Armstrong, and Janine Frost. All of them are longtime favorites of mine. And obviously I did the event with Patricia Briggs not that long ago, and Wild Sun was probably my favorite book in that series, in the Alpha and Omega series, which was a surprise. You know, it's like book 6. And so a lot of times when you first books get you in love with those characters, but that was pretty amazing. And you know, it's funny, I've actually been kind of all over the place reading lately. Like I just read Cool for the Summer by Dahlia Alder, and it was great. Not urban fantasy at all, but I read that and it was excellent. Where else did we go? Oh my goodness.
How about thrillers? Have you read any good thrillers lately, or did you read any thrillers kind of in the process of trying to write one?
I read a lot of Ruth Ware. And actually I did Turn of the Key on audio, which was a really different experience, because I've read so much of her books. To hear it on audio was creepy, which was great. Yeah, so that's kind of where I've been. I've been reading fantasy lately. I just started reading some Jennifer Armentrout as well. I don't know if you read her she had a YA urban fantasy with like White Hot Kiss and with gargoyles. So
it's been so good to see in the last, I don't know, like couple of years, you know, for a while, urban fantasy was just kind of dead. And like, you know, Patricia Briggs was still doing it, and Alona Andrews and Charlaine Harris was kind of playing with it a little bit, and especially with the new Vinnie Rose stuff. But it's been really great to see like Kim Harrison's jumped back into the Hollows world again. You know, we finally got a new Jim Butcher book after he made us wait for so long. So it's been nice to see that like urban fantasy is slowly starting to become a thing again, and that like vampires are starting to pop up in YA. It's great to see kind of those cycles kind of come back around again.
Yeah, well, and there's been a bunch of like vampire short fiction too on the YA front that's been good. There was the Vampires Never Die anthology. That was really good. I think out of that one, First Kill by Victoria Schwab is now gonna be a Netflix show. Like, there's a bunch of really, really good stories buried in there. So.
Yeah, this time last year, like as the, you know, pandemic, the store had just closed, and I was just like, there were a lot of people that just couldn't focus, and it was like urban fantasy. Like I jumped back in because we'd set up the event with Kim Harrison, and realized that she was jumping back into the Hollows, and I realized like I hadn't read like the last 3 books in the series, so it was really fun to just like inhale all of those and the new one. And like I reread, and like Melissa Marr had just come out with the new Wicked Lovely sequel after having been so many years since she'd done it. So it'd been really fun to kind of jump back into those. I'm so excited about the Hex on the Beach event to get to chat with all 3 of them together. Melissa emailed me, do you want to do this? I'm like, yeah, I definitely want to like harass the 3 of you online in front of everybody. It's going to be so much fun.
Well, and Melissa's thriller, Pretty Broken Things, is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I loved it. It's super, super dark, but really, really good.
Yeah. I just finished her middle grade that she's got coming out, The Hidden Knife. And it's so fun because it's almost like a sweet book, which it seems like the weirdest thing to say about a Melissa Marr book, because they're not sweet. They're generally dark, and, you know, but this one is like, it's this really sweet little middle grade adventure. So I can't wait for everybody to get to read it and explore it.
Oh, fun. Yeah, there's a fun YA that's coming out in June that I'm excited about, called Curses by Alicia Mcbride. Beauty and the Beast retelling.
Ooh.
Like, yeah. And it's Lish, so it's funny.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about the genre, and also kind of like the young adult thrillers, kind of like you're writing, is like you're able to kind of, like you said, you can have murders, you can have, you know, characters dealing with all of that, but then, you know, you can throw that humor in there to balance it out. So who is your favorite character in Prom House?
You know, I actually really, really love Kylie, the protagonist. I like that she really wants to find some sort of order. She's an artist, so like everything that she looks at has this, how can I sketch my way through this, which is not how my brain works, but I find it really fascinating. And she was really, really fun. I also found Danny to be really, really powerful in the book. So yeah. And
since it's been a minute since I've read it, like it's all from her perspective, right? You don't jump around her for other characters. Yep. So was there any temptation to be able to kind of give people like other clues from other people's perspectives?
Yes, very tempting. But so really tempting, because there's a lot of kind of finger pointing of suddenly now kind of friendship type stuff of people are really close. One of the characters, you know, boyfriend dies. And suddenly there's like a fracture there from a friendship perspective. And you have to wonder, you know, are they aware of other things? Is there more that I need to know here? And I definitely thought about doing multi-POV, but I felt like you would know too much. You know, trying to make sure that it was a good surprise when you found out who the killer is. And that was my biggest goal with this book, was to make sure that it was not obvious out the gate who was our killer. And I hope feedback so far sounds like that has been the case, that people did not see that entirely coming. So I hope it hits.
So did you know who the killer was going to be when you started, or did you discover it as you were writing?
I discovered it as I was writing. I had to figure it out fairly early, but their motivation, that took some writing and some time, really letting the whole group interact to really have that kind of bubble up, particularly how they have backstory with other characters, and what comes out there, of how everything kind of ties together.
So Marcia wants to know, is there any other genre that you would like to explore?
Yes, all of them. I like a lot of stuff. I definitely really want to write or have out some like low sci-fi. I'm not going to try and give you like something really mathy. But I think there's a lot of really interesting kind of ripped from the headline science stories, and I'm just like a science nerd. So I would like to have something in that area. And then I'm working on second world fantasy now. So trying a little bit of everything.
So in the process of bringing Prom House out, was there any talk of you using a pseudonym, since it's so different than the urban fantasy stuff?
So, it's funny. I was the only one who brought it up.
Oh.
I brought it up, particularly just they're very different books, very different type of thing. But the overall consensus was, you do murder and, romance together. That's true with the urban fantasy as well. And so, yeah, everybody was comfortable with me sticking with my name. But yeah, it was certainly I had that thought too of I don't know that there's a ton of crossover between the YA thriller and the urban fantasy. But they're definitely both still me. They're definitely, if you like my voice, you will probably find that to be consistent regardless of genre.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think you would pick one up and be like, I can't believe the same person wrote these two books. It's not like they're so different. It's always interesting to me to see kind of where sometimes publishers will want somebody to change names and not. So it's funny to me that you were the one that brought it up and not anybody else.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure it's also because, you also know a lot of authors who have kind of straddled genres and stuff like that as well. So.
Yep. Yeah. Somehow we all just end up hanging out together. It's everyone who wants to try a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. But I think that's common of people who also write urban fantasy, because it is a mishmash genre. So mm-hmm. It makes sense that a lot of us love romance, and we love thrillers, and we love horror, and we love fantasy, because all of those things kind of get thrown in the mix.
So what is something that surprised you, going back to kind of being a reader versus now being a writer? What is something that you learned in the process of writing and publishing that just surprised you about the publishing world?
I think a lot of people, as a reader, you don't realize how much is out of the author's control, and like the timeline of things, that most of the time when you have a book coming out, you are working, probably have a deadline, almost always right at release day. And so, it's interesting because I had done interviews for blogs and stuff. It was release week. You'd be talking to the author about their book and not realizing that they're having to think about what's happening in the next book that they're not supposed to be talking about right now, because nobody knows about that. And kind of the flow there. And it's been interesting too in Prom House, the visual for like the cover is fantastic and perfect, but they totally handled all of that. Like, I got to see it when it came together. I'm like, hey, do you like it? And I was like, yes, I love it. But I think a lot of times people think that the product as a whole is all author. And Borrowed Souls, I was heavily consulted. But less so here with Prom House, and it ended up being the perfect cover for the book. I'm not, I write words, but I think that's a surprise too. Once you get into the other side, is how much work is done by your publishing house. I mean, that's why in my case I choose to be traditionally published, is they do a ton of work.
How about titles? Was Prom House always the title, or did it go through other incarnations?
It was always Prom House. It was funny. I made this long list of trying to come up with like lots of different ideas, and then we just were like, no, that really Prom House. And I think too, when you think about the Christopher Pike, the Fear Street books, it was the same too. I mean, it was the sleepover. You knew exactly like what's on the tin is what's inside. And I think that's true of Prom House too. You look at that cover, you know what you're getting. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be murdery. Clearly there's a party and things go awry.
So you mentioned that you're working on some other stuff that you're not ready to talk about just yet. Let's see, I'm going to check my notes real quick. We talked about the imprint and pitching. Did I ask you if you had a favorite R.L. Stine Fear Street book? Or R.L. Stine book?
Yeah. I mean, definitely like The Overnight was certainly a favorite of mine. Yeah, I mean, I could talk a little bit about what I'm working on, but nothing solid. It's all abstract.
That's one of the interesting things about virtual events versus in-store events too. Sometimes like if you're still working on it, you can talk about, but how sometimes people can't talk about things because of like contracts being signed and things like that, where like if it's in the bookstore, people will be like, oh, there's no cameras here, I can say this, yes, but it's virtual. You're like, oh, this is going to be up for a while, I have to be careful about what I say, because like we were doing an event with Mary Kay Andrews a couple of weeks ago, and she's like, oh, I have something else coming out later this year, but I'm not allowed to talk about it for like another week. So it's so funny to see kind of how virtual world versus in-store event stuff works.
Well, it's like how if you're on Twitter, everybody has to be like, I'm going to have really good news to tell everybody in like 6 months. I mean, Prom House, for example, and this is interesting. Originally, like we thought we were going to announce at a certain time, and then there was pandemic, and it shifted. At the beginning of the pandemic, a bunch of release dates got moved as publishers tried to figure out things. There was, distribution stuff, all of those things. And so suddenly it was like, okay, let's put a pause on this. And so it was funny because I had told people like, oh no, I'm going to have news. And then it was like, it's still a secret, but there'll be news, but it's still a secret. And it was like this moving target of, hey, this thing is totally done and turned in. And sometimes that's how that goes. But yeah, so it's sometimes we have to do the subtweet.
Yeah, there was such a chaotic period that like you said, this time last year, there were so many books that were supposed to come out, and it was like, oh, this was going to come out in April. Oh no, we're going to push it to June, because by then, at that point we're stupid and thought like by June everything's going to be open again and things will be fine. So there was a good like 2 or 3 month period there where people are like this, like I have no idea when anything is supposed to come out, because so much stuff had shifted. Or we had set up we were working on, in March last year, we were working on a virtual event with Laurel K. Hamilton, and we were like, we were working on an in-store, it was at that point, it was supposed to be an in-store event. And so I sent them to her publicist, and then later I was like, oh, I can't believe that like we put a date on hold in June thinking like you were going to be here in the store. Clearly that's not happening. Let's move it to virtual. So it's just crazy to think that all of that was like just a year ago.
Yeah, but it's kind of cool too, in that like now we're all getting really comfortable doing virtual events. In that there's people from everywhere that can come to the event. Hi everybody. That there's less of a geography component. It doesn't mean everybody has to buy their books online or call you if they're not in the Houston area though, which is. I mean, I like shopping online. I order from you guys and have you ship it up to Dallas. So,
yeah, it's been kind of cool to see how kind of us being able to get to see this, we're really excited to see, you know, once we're actually able to start hosting some stuff in store again, how we can still do virtual stuff or how we can potentially live stream our in-store events, because about a third of what we've done historically in the store has usually been like mail order for signed copies. So we have people that have ordered books from us for, you know, the 10 years that I've been working at the bookstore that have never set foot in the store and have never gotten to see one of our events are now able to like to do this and ask questions and be involved. So I'm really excited to see kind of how the book world can be able to kind of take the in-store stuff and the virtual stuff and just kind of make it more accessible for everybody.
Yeah, hybrid events.
Yeah.
Next time, in-store, hybrid event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially for like subgenres that don't necessarily get, like I say this every time I do a cozy author event, we get some of our best turnouts for them because, you know, generally they tend to be like $7.99 mass markets. So unless you're a local author, publishers aren't going to like, you know, send you off on a tour. So it's been great to be able to connect people with readers like this. And also, you know, be able to have you interview Patricia Briggs and you guys don't even have to be in the same state or the same room. So it's been nice to be able to kind of pair up and not have geography be as limiting as it is. So that's kind of one of the upsides to the pandemic. But yeah, so definitely next time something out, you have to come back to Houston and we can do it up in the store. We can go have margaritas afterwards and we can have a real event. So as Chelsea mentioned, we are available online. So if you guys have not ordered copies of Prom House, you can visit us at murderbooks.com. I've dropped a link in the comments. We have signed copies available. We ship all over the country. If you are out of the country and you need it shipped, if you just shoot us an email versus trying to order it online, we can help you out there. We have been, if you tuned in late, we've been chatting with Chelsea Mueller, whose new book, Prom House, came out May 4th.
May 4th.
May 4th. And if you missed any part of our chat, you can rewatch it on Facebook and YouTube once we are done. They will be archived. And if you haven't checked out, like I said, when I started the Facebook and YouTube channel, there's a ton of author events out there. So like I said, Prom House is so much fun. You know, we've been talking a lot about kind of how it harkens back to those really fun Christopher Pike and R.L. Stine books. If you were young enough and you have no idea what any of that means, it's okay. It's just a really fun, fast pace, like we said, kind of a little bloody, funny. There's kissing, great thriller. So I hope if you guys have not checked it out, you will. Chelsea, thank you so much for chatting with us again tonight.
Yeah. Happy to do stuff with Murder by the Book and with you. It's always good to see you, John.
You too. So you take care. Give your husband a hello from us and hug that sweet baby for us. And we will see you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.